Yeah, so welcome. This is, like as I said, the first of our series of officiating webinars this year, and this is more tough calls. So this is us kind of carrying forward from what we started last year in talking about tough calls and watching ICE video and talking about them as a group and kind of figuring out what the right thing to do in those situations is. So to launch, I'm just going to share our territory acknowledgement with everyone to say that while we are a proud Canadian organization, we acknowledge that our head office is located on traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Ring It Canada extends our respect to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable contributions to this land. We are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So tonight, I am Paul Shipman. I am a master instructor and provincial evaluator from Manitoba. I'm currently the chair of the Clinic Review Committee. That's the group of people under Ring It Canada who are redeveloping our officiating clinic program. I guess for those of you who don't know me, I suppose I can share my video for a second here. Give me a sec to flip things over. Stop sharing. No, I guess it stopped that on its own, didn't it? Yeah, there I am. Yeah, so hi, I'm Paul Shipman. I don't know, I don't have much to add other than that. I will be guiding us through this tonight. So tonight, basic logistics, what's going on? We've got 14 interesting incidents to look at tonight after each one. So first of all, each one's gonna play in the speed that it actually happened on the ice. We are going to be looking at these incidents from the perspective of the referee on the ice. We are going to pause after each video and have an opportunity to, have a question and answer about it and have some conversations about what we just watched on the ice. So I said we're going to watch it in real speed that happened on the ice. That is true. It's also going to play again. It's going to repeat. It's going to play at that point as in slow-mo, and then it will play at least one more time at regular speed. There will be some incidents where it will play more than the 3 times because we're going to highlight some aspects of the video to help us understand what we're looking at and what we're talking about. As this webinar goes on, please feel free to ask questions, use the chat or unmute yourself and speak up, interrupt me, that's all okay. But at best as we can, let's try to keep to one at a time speaking. There could potentially be quite a few people on this call, and I think we want to minimize people talking over each other. I've thrown this note up here on the right, chat answers, wait to send. So I'm going to ask the group questions sometimes, I mean, with our first one as an example, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you, what do you think the call is? And what I want to do is I want to try to minimize people repeating other people's answers just because those are the answers on the screen. And what I want us to do is not click send. I want you to type your answer, but wait until I give everyone the go to press send so that all the answers come in at the same time and we can see what everybody's thinking individually. Other than that, if you want to speak, feel free to just unmute yourself. If you want to use the hand up function, that's fine too. During the time that video is playing, let's not be sharing our video. So let's not share our camera. And let's try to stay unmuted unless we want to speak up during the video playback. That's just going to ensure that the video playback is the best quality for everyone. And that's really what we want to do there. At this point, does anybody have any questions about that stuff? Not hearing any so far. I am going to stop sharing my screen and start it up again, just to make sure that I did that correctly and optimized everything for video. And we're going to start. We're going to kick off right away. And I'm going to get my notes out so I remember what everything is. Okay, number 1. All right, so that's number one, our first little incident from on the ice. So I'm going to ask everyone to throw up in the chat what they think the right call is if there's a call on that play. And don't press send. I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, press send. Someone is not muted, so we'll correct that. All right, so we've got some similar things here. Major boarding, nothing, boarding, 4-minute major body contact, body, trip, body, 2 minutes for boarding. So I'm gonna take that a step back and let's just watch the slow-mo again. So I would say that the correct call in this case is a major body contact. And I'll explain that before I press play. So first of all, what we're gonna see is we're gonna see that the contact is at the hips with the hands, and it's in the lower back. That's the contact that's causing the fall. There isn't actually any foot contact going on to elicit a trip. It's not quite boarding because the player doesn't go directly into the boards. The way that she falls is onto the ice and she slides with her skates into the boards. And it's major because of that contact from behind. And yes, I am apparently a groaner on the ice as a referee. So do we want to have any conversation about that? Does anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to speak up about or questions about that scenario? I think that this one is a tough call because it doesn't feel major, right? It's not like a super aggressive hit. It's not super aggressive contact. Go ahead, Blair.
No, I was going to say, I agree with that call. It's, you know, when you're as the referee, you're going to be right there too, right? Like, so you had a pretty good view of it. Because when you saw there going into the corner, like there wasn't, at first it looked like it was almost from the side, but you could see that the player clearly had their back to them. So yeah, even though it wasn't a hard hit, like you said, it was still, was from behind. So that's 4 minutes. And then you had to determine if it was either going to be a body or boarding. And I agreed that like she wasn't at the boards yet. So that wasn't a boarding. It was, she was still 2 feet away from the boards when she hit her with the body. So I thought that was a good call. And it was easy to, for official was right there. They could see that part of it.
Yeah. So again, I just want to reiterate, like it is a tough call because like Blair agreed with me, it's not a huge hit, right? So it doesn't feel major when you're the official on the ice making that call, but it fits exactly with our rules and the emphasis on that contact to the head or from behind, and how that results in a major penalty. Does anyone want to see it again, or can we move forward? All right, I'm going to move forward. What we're about to see is this play out again, actually. I don't know where everyone is in their development path as officials on this call. I know some of the names that I've met before are probably further along than what we're about to discuss. But I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about ring focus here and how we need to look at things on the ice to be able to even capture this hit and know that it's a penalty and know that it's a major body contact. Sorry, I have some pause time there. So what happens a lot when we're starting out is we really, really worry about where that ring is. And if we're tight on watching where that ring is in that play, we aren't open enough visually to be able to catch where that contact is. So we really need to work to use our peripheral and watch the bodies as they come in together to be able to see where that contact happens and what results on the ice. So here's our next incident. All right, so I'm going to give everyone 10 seconds to type out what they think that we would call there, if anything, and then we will discuss it as a group. So don't press send, wait your 10 seconds. All right, you can press send. All right, we got a pretty good mix here. So we've got interference, we've got body on red, major body, we've got body contact, major roughing, 2-minute body contact, and so on. So we'll take a step back here so we can see it happen one more time. And Christy has added in a note of nothing. So this one is a tough call. This one is definitely a tough call. And I think that what we need to have an understanding of here a little bit is our body contact principles. Does anybody know our first body contact principle?
Unavoidable, or they have to avoid it.
Right. So everyone is responsible to avoid body contact, right? And our third principle, I'm pretty sure it's our third principle, is if any moving player should be aware that they would result in body contact with another player, they must take action to avoid it. So what we're all thinking here as we watch this is that that white/maroon player is pretty tight on red and kind of pushing on her. So any penalty type scenario that comes out of here, we really shouldn't consider to be her fault. I think that's what a lot of us are probably thinking, which is why we're leaning towards potentially nothing or just body contact or something like interference. But what we need to ask ourselves is, as we watch this player come in, does she have an opportunity to avoid contact with the goalkeeper? I'm going to say that she does, and she does not take action to avoid that contact, and that when she contacts that goalkeeper, the initial contact is to the head. So we're going to watch that again, and you can decide for yourself whether or not you agree. And maybe it would be better to watch that in slow motion. So I would say, in my opinion, she had opportunity to avoid, and she doubled down and tried to protect herself more than avoid the contact so that she could keep running to the net for a potential shot, even though that didn't formulate. And as a result, she is responsible for the body contact that happens with the goalkeeper. And because the initial contact was to the head, we have a major body contact penalty there. Derek, please unmute yourself and speak up.
Yeah, when I saw it in slow motion, it almost looked like she banged into both girls intentionally, or both players intentionally. Like she knocked down two pins with one shot, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Would you ever? So if that's what you actually saw, would you give two separate penalties?
So I'll say so. Yes. My quick answer is yes. There are cases where I would give the two penalties, but I'll go back again into the slow-mo here. And if we go back to first principle that we just talked about, everyone's responsible for avoiding contact, and then talk third principle, players who are moving and can be aware of body contact need to take steps to avoid it. We have to ask, did that white maroon player avoid body contact, right? Did she take steps to avoid contact? Was she aware that contact was going to happen? I would argue yes. Did she have responsibility to take steps to avoid, and did she? I would say she did have responsibility and she didn't attempt. So that would be a case where I think that those two contacts cancel out, right? That's a both or none, and probably wouldn't make that call scenario. So I'm focusing largely for myself on the goalkeeper in this case.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will back us up a bit and everyone can watch that one more time. All right, 10 seconds again. Let's see what we think. All right, you can click send. Yeah, so pretty much on the whole, it looks like we agree. Basically, what's going on here is we've got a major tripping scenario. There's a lot of reasons, I think in this case, that it ends up being a major tripping scenario. But I put this video in this session so that we could focus on the slew foot, right? That's a new rule as per the last rule change cycle, that a slew foot should result in a major tripping penalty. But I also saw notes in there about the fact that it was a reckless play. It absolutely was. We can also talk about it being pretty deliberate and aggressive, right? I think there's no question that she went in with intent to trip that girl. I think if we watched it again, we would feel that way. I did see someone on their head flagged a potential match. I think that this is a scenario where it's not a bad thing to think about. I don't think my read of the play is that she intended to injure the girl. I would say that she probably intended to trip the girl. So I think that becomes a little bit subjective on our part, and it is definitely something that we need to take consideration of and make decisions about. I don't know if there's enough evidence for me watching that to say she definitely intended to injure the girl. Any other thoughts, considerations someone wants to bring forward on it?
Can I revisit the first video?
The very first video?
Yeah, just considering, so you're bringing up a match, and so my wonder is with that first video, I don't think it's a match, but there's that new rule as well with time and space and going into the boards, being able to protect yourself.
Oh, yes. So here we go. So if we talk about that new rule, it wouldn't apply in this case because the new rule, what it says is that it would put the player's head directly into the boards or the crossbar or the post of the net without the ability to protect themselves,
Protect themselves.
which we
Okay.
generally mean like raising their arms in front of them to like protect them. So because they weren't quite close enough to the board to go directly into the board in this case, and they weren't falling forward, they fell backward, we wouldn't be in a situation to consider whether or not that was a match penalty.
Great. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to play a video, of course, because that's what we're doing tonight. This one's going to be an interesting one, and it's going to be difficult to see. So we might come back and play it a few times. It's going to play back initially exactly the way you would have seen it on the ice if you were the official. It's then going to zoom in a little bit and play back slowly, and then it will play again. So I think what I will do is I'll come back to the beginning of them and play them through twice so everyone has an opportunity to fully see it before we go through what the call would be. Actually, having played it, I think the zooming in probably focused well enough on it. So let's take the 10 seconds. We'll take 15 seconds to write our answer, and I'm going to speak a bit while you do that. I think the thing that really stands out to me in this clip is how quickly it happens, how difficult it is to see the scenario happen on the ice when you're the official. Like in the standard view, right? When it's, when we aren't zoomed into it and it's going at regular speed, it's a little flick out of the corner of the eye that you're seeing. But when we zoom into it and see it in slow-mo, it should be a lot clearer what happens in that play and what the call should be. So if you have your call, let's press send. So this one's a pretty interesting one. A pretty good mix of things here. Elbowing, unsportsmanlike or match, rough play, major elbow, etc. So, and Jessica, I saw that you said you can't see it, so we are going to go back. We will watch it again. So this is a rough play, in my opinion, and I really am open to feedback on that from anybody because we don't have a lot of examples of what rough play should be, and this is, in my case, my opinion. So what we are seeing here is, if I go back to the highlight, what happens after yellow makes her pass is that white's coming up and she is going to swing her fist into the back of the head of yellow. Right there. And you can see how yellow's head bobs forward from the hit. We can play that one more time here. So, I mean, the things that we're considering here, right? We all know that it's wrong, that it's definitely unsportsmanlike, and it's just a question of how we address that. So Julie has made a note in the comments that we don't have a specific contact to the head. I don't know if you mean like rule or whether or not you see specifically the contact to the head. I'm going with rough play here because we're throwing a punch on the ice. We get to make the decision about whether or not we think it's a match, right? Was there intent to injure behind that? And I think that there's potentially an argument to be made that if you're throwing a punch on the ice, that you intend to injure somebody. But some of that stuff just happens in frustration as well. And I think that we need to, make a call about how much of that really was in intent to injure when, and it is a tougher call. I have called match penalties. There's going to be one match penalty in this video because I just simply don't have recordings of the other ones. And I have called match penalties in scenarios where punches have been thrown. But in those scenarios, it turned into fights on the ice, not just a single punch being thrown. Unsportsmanlike is not enough for this call. It is intentional, right? It's deliberate. It is aggressive. Rough play, to the question in the chat, is in fact 4 minutes automatically. And technically the call is major rough play. Of course, we also get the opportunity to discuss, I mean, there's body contact here effectively, right? And that body contact's initial contact is to the head. So from that direction, we're going to a major penalty as well. Definitely should not be unsportsmanlike. Blair, I saw your hand up. Speak up.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, so like the unsportsmanlike would have been more if, you know, because she's obviously upset if she goes to swing at her, for example, and the player's already skated away. That, to me, I would see that as more an unsportsmanlike. Where this one, she actually hits the girl, and it's from behind, it's to the head. So it's more than like you said, it's more than unsportsmanlike. I don't think there's enough there to say that she's, you know, she's not fighting. So I don't see that as a match. And so, yeah, when you're looking at the options you have for penalties, like it's definitely a 4 minute. So which one works the best there? And that would be the rough play. So that's how I would kind of figure out which one would be the most suitable.
Yeah, thanks. So again, I really want to point out like how different it looks from when we slow it down and zoom it in, and the work that we need to do to have our perspective right so that we can capture that out of the corner of our eye and realize that something like that is going on and make that call. So Brianne's asked what the signal for rough play is. I'll start my video and I think it'll show to you, but basically it is in front of your body, the same as body contact would be to the side. It's just that it's out in front of your body instead of to the side. And of course it's paired with the major because it is major rough play, not just rough play. All right, next video.
$31.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump into talking about that one. It is exactly the same as the video that we watched before. Obviously, the scenario is a little different, but it's a major rough play again. One thing that I want to focus on is the fact that the official on the ice, who was me, blew their ice immediately following that hit, following that punch. So one of the things that our rule book says is that if we are witnessing a major penalty happen on the ice, we have the option of stopping play. And in my situation there, I felt that it was necessary to prevent that scenario from escalating by blowing the whistle on that major penalty to make sure that it was assessed immediately. Was it clear to everybody? That one's a pretty difficult one to see. It is, again, a girl throwing a punch on another girl. I will step back here so I can kind of point out who's who. So this girl from the black team, after the ring kind of gets stolen from her, she's going to end up here. She's going to turn around. You're going to see her back arm pump up this way and then connect on the hip of this blue girl, the girl from the blue team here. So right now her arm's coming back, and that's the connection right there, right under her shoulder, right under her armpit. Coming back, connects right under the armpit. Did we get it that time? Okay.
Didn't the blue player, like before the girl punched her, like right here on this in the screen, like isn't that a hit from behind? Because it kind of made her lose the ring.
Well, let's watch it again. I think Yvette's asking the same question, so we'll watch it through again.
31.
So I think that we could. I don't know if I did. Honestly, I can't remember right now whether or not I did. So yeah, you guys aren't wrong. Obviously, 31 comes in hard and knocks Black off of the ring. I think that it becomes a scenario of finding fit to the game there to decide. That's going to be a major body contact penalty if sorry, I'm just noticing that Julia had a note. So, okay. So, since I'm calling 31, you are most likely correct that I was calling a penalty on blue as well as on black. And I guess I didn't stop because of the match penalty. I stopped because both teams had a penalty at that point. Yeah. So, yes, I guess is my answer. I was so focused on the interesting fist bump in this one that I didn't pay attention to all the other things going on. Other thoughts, considerations on this one? All right, let's go to this guy. Yeah, to Carla's point, it is tough because play is so fast. I think the first one that we saw, the punch to the back of the head, I know was probably like an open C game. The punch to the hip was a U19 or a U16B game. And I believe this one that we just watched is a U19 or U16B as well. So I'm going to say 10 seconds for everyone to throw in what they think they would make as a call there. And then I'll play it one more time and we'll talk about it. All right, that's 10. Yeah, so good mix. I think everyone can probably see the chat here, but I guess for the recording, in case it doesn't show on the screen, we've got some thoughts like nothing or unsportsmanlike, holding, no call, verbal warning, 2 minutes unsportsmanlike, boarding, interference, holding for the dark blue player, rough play for the other girl, maybe 2, maybe nothing, depending on the tone of the game. So we'll play it back here. Yeah, so as to the holding for the black player, I'm not sure that I would make that call. I think that initially black and blue are fighting pretty well over the ring. The other player comes in, effectively stealing the ring from both of them. Black doesn't really keep blue from being able to get the ring from the other player at that point. And they both kind of had equal control over the ring. Obviously, it was an annoying kind of pinch to the boards, which is why she's throwing her fist out here at black. And I do think that pretty much what everybody said is right. We've got to make a call here. We could decide on rough play because we've got someone on the ice throwing a punch, and we definitely don't want to encourage that, right? We want to do anything we can to not encourage that. We could consider unsportsmanlike. The contact isn't very significant here. If we think about what we say about slashing, right? Stick swinging towards someone, even if we don't contact. In some cases, we might just call that slashing. In other cases, we might call that unsportsmanlike, right? So to Miles's point, I think he really gets at a good perspective here that it really depends on the tone of the game to decide what we need to do in this case to manage that situation. Thoughts, questions? Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, 10 seconds to tell me what you think that would be. You may press send. All right. So we got some good responses in here. Most people are suggesting body of some format. Interference is up there. Major trip. So let's watch it again. So while we watch it, I want us to focus largely on the white player over here on the right who's coming to the top of the triangle to connect with the black player as the black player takes her shot. And my question to the group would be, did she deliberately commit body contact to that player? And was that contact aggressive or not? And I'm going to say that my read on this scenario is that it's a major body contact penalty because she came in with intent not to injure, but intent to commit body contact, and that body contact was aggressive. And that is the de facto #1 reason to assess a major body contact penalty. Additionally, she still goes in the box because the goal was not because she still goes in the box even though the goal was scored because it would have been a major penalty regardless. And to Brianne's point, I didn't pay that much close attention, but it might have been scored before the penalty as well. You're right. Thoughts? Anyone want to expand on any of those points? Okay. Next video. Okay, seems simple. Bit of a hit at open sea. Let's take 10 seconds and let me know what you think it is. All right, you can press send. Okay, so we've got a good mix here. Major body, lots of majors suggested. We got a couple match suggested. We've got a match intent to injure suggested. Yeah, so this one's a pretty tough call. It is prior to the last rule change, it only would have been a major penalty. Major boarding, most likely, because we put the player directly into the boards. But it is now a match penalty. So this, we'll watch it again, but this is a scenario where initial contact's from behind to the back, to the lower back, in fact, where it puts the player directly into the boards, and it puts the player's head directly into the boards, where that player has no opportunity to protect themselves. So we'll watch it again, and we'll see how that lines up. And I focus on it here so that we can understand the difference here between when it's a major and when it's a match. That contact is all at her lower back. We're lifting her into the boards directly in. She has no opportunity to protect her head from contacting the boards. And we have to make that call as a match penalty. Thoughts? Discussion?
Does the player lift or raise her arms to protect herself, though?
No. I mean, she tries to slow herself on the boards, but by the time she gets into the boards, she doesn't have the opportunity to actually protect herself. And she doesn't have time to raise her hands off of her stick and bring both arms up to the boards.
Okay, I like she tries.
But it's not about whether she tries, it's about whether or not she can protect herself, right? Other thoughts? Okay, go ahead.
That was my son saying, I just wanted to say that's 100% what I was thinking when I was like, let's look at the first play, was this one. So, yay.
I had thought that this would answer your question, but I didn't want to explicitly say that there was going to be a match yet. So I wanted everyone to discover it for themselves. Correct, Jessica. Yes. So if she had really had time to raise her hands, up to where her head is and like protect her head from going into the boards, then we're back to a major boarding, not a match. But at the end of the day, we put that player's head directly into the boards, right? Without really, there really was no time or space in that hit for her to have been able to do anything where she actually could have put her hands to a point that she could have protected herself. Go ahead, Blair.
No, I was just gonna say that it, initially, like when I was watching it looked like because she dropped the ring, so the first player was stopping, and that level of play seems to be like
open C probably.
Open C or something but it just seemed like she kind of put herself in that situation. That's why I was going with the major initially, and then when you put it in slow mo, it's head first to the boards, but that player clearly stops. So the level. Like I didn't think there was intent there by any means, but I know with the way the new rule reads, she doesn't give her enough time to prevent herself from hitting the boards there. It's just like you can see she stops there, and the other player's still going for the rings. So it was just it's a tough call to make.
It is absolutely. You raise a good point there. That is something I wanted to bring up on this is that it's not an intent to injure call, right? We're not giving the white player a match penalty because we thought she meant to injure that player. We're making a match penalty call because of the rule that says if we put someone's head directly into the boards by hitting them from behind where they can't protect themselves, that it's a match penalty. So a thing to know about that is that different jurisdictions have different suspension rules around that. Like I know in Manitoba, I would need to highlight that I assess that match penalty because of hit from behind that puts the player's head into the boards, not because of intent to injure, because in Manitoba, there isn't going to be a hearing about that, right? Whereas if someone tries to hurt somebody, in addition to being ejected from the game, there's going to be a suspension hearing to decide if there should be additional games on top of that. But that also puts onus on me to watch this kind of thing happen and make a decision about when that player hit that girl from behind and put her head directly into the boards, did she do it because she wanted to injure her, right? Because I don't want to ignore a situation where someone does deliberately try to injure someone and uses the hit from behind to put their head into something where they would potentially get away, quote unquote, with just being ejected from the game and potentially a 1-game suspension after, right?
Paul, Miles here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Just what kind of going with Blair and you just said, but I mean, lots of things to consider. I mean, the level of the game, the skill of the game. She does stop. To me, it's you kind of combine it was a reckless match in the sense that the intent, not there based. It's got to be pretty blatant for that intent to call it a match. So
Agreed.
This was kind of just an ugly play by somebody who thought they were, going to be able to make a play and didn't. And yeah, based on the new rule, yeah, it's that match penalty and away you go.
Yeah. All right, moving on to our next one here. All right, guys, 10 seconds to decide. All right, you can press send. All right, good mix here. Most of us can see that we've got a trip scenario going on here. The big trick here that we need to think about, and I will go back to the beginning. Right now, that player, is she on a breakaway? And if she's on a breakaway, does she have anyone to get past other than the defending goalkeeper? As we watch her break in, that white player is definitely behind her when she trips her in front of the net. What we actually have here is a penalty shot. Thoughts? Any points you want to discuss or consider about that?
Paul, I mean, when you break it down and look at that, I'm looking at the girls on the outside trying to cut to the net. It wasn't like she was right in front of the net. And so she's trying to get to the net. The other girl comes more beside her than from behind her. So if the contact, the girl's back is turned possibly, but the contact's not made from the back. It's made on the side of the legs. So if I were in that game, based on what I'm saying, again, I'm not there in the game seeing it in full motion, but I mean, based on that, if you go back and play it, based on those pieces, I would probably just give the 2 minutes because it's the stick on the legs is not from behind, it's from more the side. The girl turns herself because she's got to turn because she can't go any further, otherwise she's in the crease. So she's making the move for that. So that's just something to consider in the situation. Yeah. And so
watch the slow-mo on it again. So I would argue, and you're not wrong, Miles, those are all things that we need to consider, but I would argue right about in a moment from here after I press play, White's going to start pressing her stick against Black's leg, and the trip begins before Black starts cutting across the space that White would have been in. So I think that the penalty begins when Black is still ahead of White. But that is just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't see that as a penalty shot. To me, that player's coming from the side. So if she was going straight at the net there, because she had it clear, like she was clear up till then. As soon as she cut in, though, she no longer had a clear break. She actually went to right where the player was. So she no longer had that clear breakaway any longer. So, I mean, like I said, if she would have gone straight and she tripped her, I 100% agree. I don't think as soon as she started cutting that she had that clear break any longer.
Okay, fair points. To Brienne's question, no, she doesn't have to be actively shooting. She just has to have a clear shot. And if the penalty that occurs takes away that clear shot, then it would be a penalty shot. And she has to have her stick in the ring. So I'm going to leave that with could be, also maybe isn't. We'll move on to our next video. Okay, 10 seconds. Okay, that's enough time, yeah. All right, so we've got a good mix here. We've got match, intent to injure, major body contact, penalty shot and major body contact. Brianne has a very fun answer. Well, that's a penalty shot, because it is. But we are also correct that it's a major, right? So this is one of the risks that we need to know as officials, and that ideally players should probably know as well. What's the primary type of penalty shot that we have? Is one where there's no one to get past, and that penalty is generally going to happen from behind the player. And if we have that contact that's initially to the back or to the head, a probably higher percentage than we expect of our penalty shots could end up being major penalty shots. And when we have a major penalty shot, not only does the player get to take a penalty shot, but the player who committed the penalty also ends up in the penalty box still following the penalty shot. In terms of the match penalty, sorry, not the match, the major penalty aspect here, we have contact from behind, and that's primarily the reason in this case that we're making that call. Any comments anybody wants to make about that one? Moving forward.
Just a quick
Oh,
question
go ahead.
actually
Yep.
on that one. Just for the mechanics of that, are you calling the penalty first, then the penalty shot?
So we would report the penalties in their order of severity, and the penalty shot would be of greater severity than the major body contact. So penalty shot would be what we signal first, followed by the major body contact.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Let's take 10 seconds to decide what we think the call there is. While I answer Yvette's question, she asked in that last scenario if the player would spend 4 minutes in the penalty box, and yes. So it's a fully served penalty. It's a major. It's 4 minutes. So in the earlier clip, that is absolutely what would happen in that scenario. That's probably been about 10 seconds. Let's see what our answers are. Okay, so pretty consistent here. We're mostly thinking major body, which we definitely have major body going on there. And I think the other question is there a penalty shot in that scenario as well? If I remember correctly, I believe that we had definitely, I believe that the officials on the ice had called the penalty shot in that play. So the question here is, when that hit happens, does that player have anyone to get past other than the goalkeeper, right? She has her stick in the ring. And I don't think, I would say, in my opinion, that a penalty shot is still the right call on the ice in that case. I think it's pretty clear that she's ahead of the players going to the net when that contact happens, and it definitely takes the shot away. So taking a step back for that for a second, I do want to talk about the major aspect of this penalty, because we definitely had contact from behind, but the contact from behind is not why we have a major body contact penalty in this case. That was definitely a deliberate and aggressive hit, and it was also reckless the way in which it was done. I think, so Julie's made a statement there about intent. I think that there could potentially be an argument for intent on that play. And you might be considering a little bit about, was that intent around an injury or not, given the severity with which the hit takes place. And I wanted to focus on the fact that it was deliberate and aggressive, because I want to make sure that as officials, we still remember to think about that as an option. And when the coach asks us why that was a major penalty, that we don't default to say, because it was from behind, just because that's such a simple statement to make and it's so easy for everyone to understand, when that's not really the reason that's a major penalty. And just saying that it was from behind isn't a great thing to teach everybody, when that's not really the reason that we had that penalty in that case. Comments, thoughts?
I thought this one was a better example too for a penalty shot, because the player actually didn't deviate. Like she was clearly ahead, stick in the ring, and she wasn't cutting into the middle there. That player definitely, just like someone said, blindsided her there. So and I put down body, a major body, and then you're right, it is aggressive and deliberate. So I mean, that would be, like, that's the better call there, and it is definitely a penalty shot when you can see it in slow-mo again.
Yeah. All right. Okay, 10 seconds. All right, you can send your answers in. What would you call? All right, good. So I think we got a good mix again here, and I don't think anyone is necessarily wrong on this one. I think there's a lot of things to consider here, and and we're definitely going to have to make some decisions about what we're going to do. So first of all, we definitely have a penalty shot. That girl was absolutely on a breakaway. That contact was definitely came from a player who was behind her. We definitely have a major penalty, right? We have contact to the back. Someone said rough play. I wouldn't be opposed to that being the call on that. The major could be rough play. We've got deliberate and aggressive. We've got some recklessness in that play, right? Like, how reckless is it to hit someone, to push someone in the way that she pushed her? at the speeds at which everyone was going. And I think that there's potentially an argument to say, am I calling a match in that scenario? So here we are. I'm pretty sure that's a U16B game, right? Play can be aggressive and mean in some of those games sometimes. The girl definitely screams when she hits the boards. I think we all heard that. So there is a factor of there is an injury. Now we have to decide, was there intent to injure? Or we might even just be deciding for ourselves that there was definitely intent to cause that contact, and that contact resulted in injury. Am I going to make a match penalty call in this case? One of the things I might be considering for myself is, am I de-escalating this game from going off the rails by ejecting that player, and then other people can decide whether or not it should be assessed as a further suspension, right? Because that's part of our toolbox when we're making those decisions. If that's asked if I can play it again, so I'm going to go back to the very beginning, and we'll let that play out. And to Derek's point, I would like to say that these videos are from over 10 years, like a 10-year period of me wearing this helmet camera, and not on every game necessarily, but on lots of games. So Manitoba isn't necessarily specifically rough, but here we go. You can watch how she pushes out with her elbow on the girl's back when she's in contact with her. That's the push that I'm talking about. Any other points you guys would like to cover on that? Questions, thoughts? Okay. Okay, 10 seconds to decide what you would call. Yeah, so we're pretty consistent in answers there. Definitely a penalty shot. We'll look again. Someone flagged a possible major trip, so we'll look there to see if we would agree with that. What else did I want to say about this? So I did this game alone, which is why my positioning is not what you would expect in a two official system. While we're following it in on the left-hand side, but I am officiating. I believe this was a U16 AA exhibition game that I was doing alone, running dot to dot. So we'll get to see the impact of that again too. And I had two cameras on that game. Actually, I had four cameras on that game, but there was the one on my head and the one in the zone for that one. So I think probably not a major in that case. I think that the stick just ended up between the legs. I don't think we had a deliberate play there that resulted in something aggressive. So I think if we see again, just because the hook thing came up a couple times in the chat as well, I mean, we are definitely getting a leg play here. The trip is coming out of, so I think tough call on a hook when we're definitely in the legs. It's an easier sell and probably more appropriate that stick in legs is a trip, not a hook, even though it is kind of like a slow her down and then kind of trip. Here it is again. Hopefully that covers it. Okay, guys, we're on to our last one. We're now gonna watch that penalty shot happen. So, goal or no goal? Excellent. Everyone agrees on the last clip. No goal. Great. So those are my... Eric's question, why are the players standing at center ice? Because it was an exhibition game, and I'm pretty sure that was at 0-0 that we played that through, and it was an exhibition game. So those are my 14 incidents for us to discuss tonight. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pop up my camera, and if anyone wants to go on screen and talk for a bit, you're welcome to. I'm going to leave recording on for a minute here in case there are any questions that we want to kind of go over or talk about. Otherwise, I'll stop it right away.
Can you go over when, after a penalty shot, if the player always goes into the box afterwards or if any penalties are canceled? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So any penalty that's not fully served doesn't get put in the box on a penalty call. I shouldn't say any. If you only have one penalty on a player, right? So if my arm's gone up and I'm only calling the penalty shot, then no one ends up going in the box. Just the penalty shot kind of replaces the penalty on the ice. If we have a fully served penalty, so that's an unsportsmanlike, a major penalty of any kind, a misconduct penalty or match penalty that either is the same penalty, well, yeah, that where that penalty resulted in the penalty shot situation as well, that penalty still goes in the box to be served because it's fully served. It does not get canceled by a penalty shot being taken. Was that clear enough?
Yeah, so, but if there was someone else serving another penalty before that, they can come out if the goal is scored.
No, a penalty shot does not cancel a penalty. So if a goal is scored on a penalty shot, it does not cancel a penalty.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think this. Hey, you go. Man. I think this was at. I don't know that it was at Westerns. It may have been at Double A's, but there was an instance, and I don't really know that I understand what happened, like the reasoning behind it. So maybe you can talk me through it.
Okay.
If they're in the defensive end, and say like the offensive team is coming in, and there's a defense that essentially sets a pick, like at the end of the free play line at the boards, like they normally do, because they like scoop into the zone, right? So if they stand there, maybe she was trying to set a pick. The girl came into the zone, but the opposing team got a penalty for it for interference.
Oh, sure. So if we think about the point of emphasis on the crease, because I think in the point of emphasis we focus on the crease, that if there's contact in front of the crease that results in a player going in the crease, that we shouldn't just call the crease, that we should be calling interference or body contact depending on the level of contact. So that the actual rule behind that point of emphasis is not only about the crease. It's about any area or zone, right? So if I committed body contact that brought the ring carrier over the blue line, right, that could still be body contact or interference depending on how that play happened.
On how
it's
it
not
happened,
just the violation, right? It's not just calling the violation and washing my hands of the matter, right? So that would apply as well to 4-in at the free play line, because that is again one of our line violations that would be applicable to that rule.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.